What's going on, everyone? The Power Cell Freak is here to bring you the evolution of Jak and Daxter revamped. Now, in my video before the last one, I said that my new video will be the start of a new series, so what I've decided to do is start the Evolution series. Basically, I will be taking a game or series and go over how the games have improved and evolved and how far they've come since their release. So to start this off, I'm going to be redoing my Evolution of Jak and Daxter video. For some reason, that video is one of the most viewed videos on my channel, and I think it's really bad, but that's what I think of all of my older videos. Don't worry, I'm not going to delete any of my videos, I'm just going to redo this one. This video is also intended for newcomers to the series to get to know what they're in for and what to expect. Therefore, there will be no spoilers in any shape or any form, and I will try not to mention anything that might spoil anything and anything that might be considered spoilers, like for example the start of the story for Jak X, because that spoils something in Jak II. So let's get started. Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy's development, started way back in 1999 while the rest of the Naughty Dog's team were working on Crash Team Racing, and only 2 programs were assigned to start on the new project dubbed Project Y. After Crash Team Racing was finished and the PS2 rolled around, the whole Naughty Dog team was on board for their next new series after ditching the Crash Bandicoot series. They set out to create a brand new fully open world 3D platforming adventure. They spent most of the early development creating the new engine for the game to be able to run it on the PS2. Andy Gavin had to create his own unique programming language as well. Jak and Daxter's designs also went through a lot. Starting out as some lion sort of thing, Jak slowly turned more human-like, and eventually the Jak we all know today. Another design choice that the team at Naughty Dog thought was really important for Jak was to make him silent, in an attempt to immerse the player in the sense of, you are Jak. After 3 long years in development, Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy was released on December 7th, 2001 on the PS2, and oh man was it impressive. As soon as you start playing the game, you are treated to some of the best graphics that late 2001 had to offer. The environments were so lush and colourful and fun to run around and collect things, and not only that, Naughty Dog also achieved what they set out to do, which was to create a completely load-free open world, and they did so epically. With the exception of loading the game, there is not a single load time in the whole game. Of course, there is the cutscene going to Misty Island, but that still keeps you in-engine and never draws you away from it, and you never see the word loading in the whole adventure. You can run right from the beginning of the game all the way to the end without having to stop for anything. No load times whatsoever. That was an impressive feat for Naughty Dog. The beautiful environments and the lack of load times were not the only things that made Jak and Daxter so great though. This game is a collectathon, and a really great one at that. This game was released at a time when the collectathon genre was thought to be dead. It was just so fun to go to each of these areas and collect everything you saw, and there were tons of things to collect. And a lot of people might be turned off by all the things to collect, but only one collectible is important, and these are the things that help you progress. These are the power cells. These can be gained by wandering around the place, just basically finding them, or doing specific quests, or trading with the many NPCs in exchange for precursor orbs. This acts as the currency, and these things are everywhere. Now, like I said earlier, the power cells are the only collectibles of any importance, but collecting the precursor orbs will help in order to gain additional power cells for your quest. There are also 7 hidden scout flies in each area. Once you collect all 7 in the area, you get an additional power cell. Again, these aren't mandatory to collect, but they are good to keep an eye out for to get another power cell. And if that wasn't enough, there are also the eco power-ups. There are a total of 6, but only 4 are of any use. There is the green eco, which acts as health and is most commonly found. There is the blue eco, which increases your speed and acts as a lazy tool for collecting things, because it basically acts as a magnet that pulls everything in, from precursor orbs to green eco and other blue eco clusters, and also activates certain objects. There's the yellow eco, which lets you shoot out fireballs, and the red eco, which temporarily enhances your strength and attack radius. These are found all throughout the world and are a good way to spice things up. Now, I've talked at length about this game, and I haven't even mentioned everything this game has to offer. If you want to see what else this game has to offer, it's available on PS2, PS3 and PS Vita, but I do not recommend the Vita version. The game on PS2 has generated a total amount of 3.64 million units worldwide and has been granted the honour of being a platinum game. Now, on to the next game. After the success of the first Jak and Daxter game, Naughty Dog knew they had to make a sequel. But where did they go from Jak 1? I mean, the first Jak game was great, as it was. What could they really do with that world? Nothing really. So, what did they do? They changed fucking everything, that's what. I mean, you don't even have to play the game to know that it's different, just look at the box art. Jak looks completely different and has a goatee. He's being chased by guys with guns. Both him and Daxter have crazed look on their faces. Daxter's name isn't even in the title, and Jak is holding a fucking gun. And if that hasn't thrown you off, you just have to open the cover and... oh dear god. Jak has turned all white and looks like a monster. Well, let's see how this turns out. Jak II was released in October 2003, so the game had a far shorter development cycle than the first game. This time around, they didn't have to create a whole new engine to run the game. Okay, so you put the game in, watch the opening cutscene, and you instantly realize that this game is a lot darker. And you also see that Jak has a goddamn voice in this game.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Holy shit, and he is pissed. The first thing you do when you start playing the game is escape a prison. How fucking badass is this game? After playing for about 30 minutes, you can already tell the game plays a lot differently as well. Jak's moveset is the same for the most part, so that's cool. The game is still an open world with zero load times, but instead of going to specific areas and doing quests like in the first game, this is a sandbox world, with the little minimap and everything. The power cell collecting based gameplay has been completely removed, making this less of a collectathon and more of a mission based action adventure platformer. You're in a sandbox world where you can steal other people's hover vehicles and piss off the Crimson Guards, which act as police. Now already, if you're a newcomer to the series, you can probably make the comparison of this game to Grand Theft Auto. But trust me when I say that this game is a lot more creative and a lot better than any GTA game ever released, in my opinion anyway. So you play the game for about an hour or so if it's your first time playing, and you have a feel for the controls while driving the hover vehicles, aka zoomers, and start having a feel for the city. You are introduced to the other new thing this game has to offer, guns. Fuck yeah! No, but seriously, you do this mission for this guy and he gives you a gun. There are a total of 4 guns in this game, all representing different ecos and sharing characteristics with the corresponding colour. And you also get a hoverboard. It's called the Jetboard and it's great. Enough said. There's also the Dark Jak form, which is completely badass and is a great last resort in combat, but because you have to collect a whole bunch of Dark Eco to fill up your meter, you won't be using it much, as awesome as it is. And just a warning, if you're playing this game for the first time, it can be extremely difficult. At the time of its release, it was classed as one of the hardest games the PS2 had to offer. You have been warned. Jak's appearance in Jak II is a lot different to the first game. While he still has his racing goggles, armor plates, blue outfit, and that ring on his chest, Jak's appearance has changed quite a bit. Most noticeably, Jak looks more mature, especially with his goatee. His hair is also the same but different. With the colour scheme of yellow with green in various spots, his hair is long and down in this game, as opposed to his hair defying gravity like in the first game. His clothes are also different. While it still has that blue and brown colour palette, his clothes are more of a street punk or outlaw, I guess. With his gloves that look cool and his cool looking pants, as opposed to more of an adventurer look like in the first game, with his bandages and such. He actually has shoes in this game as well, instead of just these sandal looking things on his feet. It's always nice. So it's obvious that Jak II is a completely different game to its predecessor. The series went from a simple, fun, platforming collectathon to a completely badass, dark and edgy sandbox action-adventure game. Now, while fans of the first game may be put off by the new direction of the series, there is no doubt that Jak II is a great game despite its differences. This is kind of what the series has evolved into and how the series is going to stay. And again, I left out a lot of things in this brief overview, but if you want to see more, it's on PS2, PS3 and PS Vita, but again, I do not recommend the Vita version, it's just shit. The game on PS2 has generated a total amount of 3.78 million units worldwide. Despite its differences, Jak II was a great success, and was successful enough to prompt Naughty Dog into making a third installment to the series. Enter Jak III. Jak III was released in November 2004, and is an absolutely terrific game. Many people have thought of this game to be the best in the series, and I for one do not blame them. So the game starts with spoilers to the previous game, so I won't go into detail, but I will say that Jak is not in Haven City anymore, and has been sent to the Wasteland and the city of Spargus. You start playing for about 10 minutes, and you can see that the gameplay is still pretty much the same as Jak II, until you play for a little longer, and you get cars. Oh yeah! Jak II had Haven City, and it had the Zoomers, or the hover vehicles, whereas Jak III has the desert with real cars and car combat. Fuck yeah. But other than that, the Jak and Daxter formula hasn't evolved much from Jak II. There are the new guns, a total of 12 now as opposed to 4, you can get health upgrades, and you've got the Wasteland as well as Haven City to explore and do missions in. This game is probably the biggest game on the PS2. There's also the Light Jak form, which is like Dark Jak, but instead focusing on defensive abilities instead of offensive. The Dark Jak mechanics are better in this game as well, because it doesn't matter how much Dark Eco you have in your meter, you can go dark at any time, as long as you have some. Same goes for Light Jak. Jak's hair got short though. That makes me sad. However, the difficulty has been turned down significantly, so this game is much more enjoyable for your first playthrough. Jak's look in this game is also a lot different to its predecessor. While in Jak II, his clothes looked more together and more suited to what someone would wear in that universe, in Jak III, it kinda says balls to that and goes back to being an adventurer look like in the first game. He's got bandages on his wrists, his blue tunic is now something that just covers his chest, he's got more of a ragged look, he's got that scarf, and like I said before, his hair got shorter. Jak also obtains armor throughout the game, and this not only increases his health, but makes him look like a badass. He's got his wrist armor, which he already had but now he's got 2. He's got his leg armor, he's got his shoulder armor, which he already had, but he's got 2 of them as well, and he's got his chest armor, which makes him look awesome. Anyway, I made this overview of Jak III very brief, because there wasn't really much to talk about in relation to changes. They stuck to the formula and created another brilliant game that didn't really need much changes. Again, if you want to know more about this game, go check it out yourself, you won't be disappointed by any of these 3 games. They're available on PS2, PS3 and PS Vita. But don't buy the Vita version, I can't stress this enough, especially for Jak III. The game on PS2 has generated a total amount of 1.85 million units worldwide. Now this is where we disband from the mainstream games and go to the spin-off games, starting with Naughty Dog's last entry to the series, Jak X. Now the previous games had a lot of driving in them, not only hover vehicle driving, but driving in real cars, and that was great fun. So Naughty Dog decided to go further with that, and create a whole game based on the driving mechanic. Now, some newcomers may be thinking, what the fuck? But trust me, this is not a throwaway attempt. Like all of Naughty Dog's games, they put a lot of hard work into this game, and it really shows. Jak X was released in 2005, along with Ratchet Gladiator, the last PS2 Ratchet & Clank game made by Insomniac Games, and also a spin-off, and also great. Anyway, Jak X is a high-action racing game that is just epic. The mechanics are also a lot more advanced than in Jak III. In this game, you have multiple pickups on the track as well. You've got the blue eco, which acts as You've got the yellow eco, which acts as the front offensive weapon. You've got the red eco, which acts as the rear defensive weapon, and also used for blocking incoming projectile attacks. And you've got the green eco, which acts as health. Your vehicles also have this really cool ability. When you kill another racer, you get Dark Eco, and that fills up a gauge. When the gauge fills up, you go into Dark Eco mode, where all of your weapons upgrade and become more powerful. The Dark Eco gauge also fills up gradually when you take damage. So this game would be a good game alone with all these features and mechanics. The weapon system is pretty inventive and really fun to use. But this game also has a lot of variety. The game isn't just circuit racing, it has loads of different modes to play in. There's the Death Race, which has you destroying as many drones that spawn on the track as possible. There's the Freeze Rally, which has you racing around the track, trying to collect these things that freeze the clock temporarily. Get the lowest time and you win. Kinda like those side missions in Jak III. There's the Deathmatch, which is pretty self-explanatory, just to name a few. And on top of that, there's a wide selection of vehicles that you can unlock and upgrade and customize, unlike in Jak III. And not only is the gameplay fast, hectic and brutal, the story is actually really good. Probably one of, if not the best story in any racing game. Most of the characters return, and there's a lot of new characters as well, which have plenty of personality and edge to them. And probably the best thing about this game is the fucking kick-ass soundtrack. No shit, this game has some of the best rockin' tunes you will hear in any game. Well, except maybe Doom. But seriously, whenever I play this game, I turn down the SFX and speech volume and crank the music all the way up to the top and turn up the TV heap so I can enjoy these awesome tunes. Jak's appearance in this game has altered more than any of the other games, simply because he's not out shooting metalheads and saving the world in this game. No, he's combat racing in this game, so he's not wearing his usual armor and tunic. Instead, Jak wears what looks like racing clothes, I guess. I don't really know how to describe it, but he looks awesome. So even though it's a spin-off, Jak X will forever remain one of my all-time favourite racing games and the best spin-off ever created. It took the decent driving mechanics that Jak III had and refined it while adding a whole bunch of new things to get your head around. If you're not into racing games, you won't enjoy this game. this game requires a lot of skill, especially later on in the game, where for certain races, getting gold is mandatory for completion. But if you're fairly good at racing games, and you want to see how well this game went, I would highly recommend you check it out. It's available on PS2 only, which really sucks, and it really needs a PS4 remaster so we can play this shit online, without having to do all the other shit with the PC and stuff. The game on PS2 has generated a total amount of 0.55 million units worldwide. However, this game was Naughty Dog's last entry for the Jak and Daxter series, so now we're moving on to see what Ready at Dawn Studios gave us with Daxter on the PSP. Daxter on the PSP was the first Jak and Daxter game to not be made by Naughty Dog. This game was developed by Ready at Dawn Studios, with some assistance from Naughty Dog. The game was released in 2006 for the PSP, and didn't get a PS2 port for some reason. The game revolves around Daxter, if that wasn't obvious enough. You play as Daxter, something that only happened a total of 9 times in the original trilogy. While Daxter's moments in the original games were fun enough, you couldn't make a whole game of it. So, how did Ready at Dawn Studios do? Let's find out. So, the game's story takes place in the 2-year time period when Jak was imprisoned and Daxter was looking for him. Daxter ends up getting a job by chance as a bug exterminator. And that's all I'm going to say about the story. The story does get quite good and even ties up loose ends that the main trilogy didn't fully explain. I even went through one of them in my last theory video. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link in the description below, but if you're new to the series, I wouldn't recommend it as it does contain spoilers. Anyway, after getting your default bug swatter, you set off on your adventure in the extermination business. Not long after, you get this sprayer pack which emits this gas which stuns enemies. The sprayer pack gets quite a few upgrades, but your bug swatter doesn't. It would have been cool if you could get some better versions of the bug swatter with better and longer combos or something like that. Anyway, you gradually unlock these upgrades for your sprayer pack and all of them are very useful. These upgrades aren't here just to make your life easier by doing more damage and such, you actually need each and every one of these to finish the game. I won't go into what they are, I'll leave that to you, but trust me when I say they're all cool and they're all useful. However, I will say what the first one is. It's a pressure boost. You use this to hover over areas with it. It's really cool and makes platforming more challenging and interesting. Other than that, there isn't really much else to say about this game. Daxter's appearance hasn't changed at all, except he seems fuzzier, I guess. He still retains his likable personality, and the gameplay and the story are really good, so yeah. This game was seen as a successful spin-off by a different developer. Many of the fans of the series hold this game in high regards, myself included. However, this was the last good Jak and Daxter game ever made. If you want to see this game for yourself, it's available on PSP only. The game on PSP has generated a total amount of 4.21 million units worldwide. So, this game needs to be talked about. It is a Jak and Daxter game, but a lot of fans don't consider this game to be canon, and most fans just hate it, and I'm one of those people. This is Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier. This game was developed by High Impact Games, which was comprised of members from both Naughty Dog and Insomniac Games. So you'd think this game would have turned out great, right? This game was released in 2009 for the PSP, then ported not long after for the PS2. The game starts with Jak, Daxter, and Kira flying through an eco-store, if that makes any sense. And yes, that is Jak and that is Kira, despite them not looking like themselves in the slightest. Right off the bat, let me just say that the story is pretty shit. There are a lot of things in this game's story which makes no sense considering the lore laid down in the previous games. So if you go into this game looking for more story for the Jak and Daxter series, don't get your hopes up. So let's not waste any time with the shitty story, let's just get right into the actual gameplay. So if you played the previous games, the first thing you will probably notice is that Jak does not have his morph gun, but instead has been replaced with this thing called the gun staff. It's weird and it's stupid, so let's just leave it at that. But when you start playing the actual game, it's actually not incredibly horrible. The trademark Jak and Daxter run and gun platforming gameplay is here, although it is a lot weaker in comparison to previous games. And there is no dark or light Jak in this game at all, which is just stupid and the plot reasons make no sense and the plot just contradicts itself later on. Anyway, there are a total of 4 guns in this game and only 3 of them are in the previous games. I won't go into too much detail about the guns, all I'll tell you is that they are all worse than in the other games. Jak ends up gradually getting these eco powers from these random things found throughout the world. Now, for fans of the first game, you might be thinking, eco powers? Awesome! But it's not. There are definitely some interesting ones, but they're pretty gimmicky and are never really used in combat. They're mainly used for these specific situations to get you through the level. There are a few that can be used, like the shield and the time slow, but they're not really needed. Because you get all 4 guns pretty early on, you're already set for all the enemies. Also, these powers really suck. I won't go into too much detail about these either, but I will say that you will use them for things in the levels requiring them, but that's about it. The last thing that this style of gameplay has to offer is a purchasable upgrade system. See, every time you kill an enemy, you get Dark Eco, and you trade that for coloured eco powers using this thing they found early on in the game, and its function makes absolutely no sense, but I won't go into that. But these upgrades do things like upgrade your health and damage done by melee attacks, but the others are pretty much useless, and this upgrade system is pretty much a waste because the upgrades themselves are pretty bland and useless, and you don't play in this style of play enough. Because there are the other styles of gameplay, like the flying. This is where the game really starts to slip. This game's primarily focused on the flying mechanic, and it really sucks. And this type of gameplay takes up the majority of the game. It has bad controls, the dogfighting sucks, and is way too difficult. Being forced to play these segments is just the worst. Some of the time you just need to fly to the next location where there is missions needed to be completed, and you can just speed through all the combat and skip all that just to get to the missions. But it still sucks because later on in the game, the missions are flying missions. That ain't fun. Who the fuck had this idea? And since when has Jak had a plane fetish? Seriously, here is a scene of him gawking over a plane he found and then stole. Anyway, I've talked at length about the run and gun platforming gameplay and the flying gameplay, so now to talk about the last gameplay segment that is literally the worst thing this game has to offer. The Dark Daxter segments. Yes, cringe now. Just the concept of this doesn't make any sense. Because of some of the things that were established in the third game regarding Daxter, this makes no sense. And the gameplay is just horrible. It's a top-down something where you go around killing mutants and solving uninteresting puzzles, and it's just all so boring and unnecessary. I mean, whose fucking idea was this? Who the fuck had this idea? Why would you even consider this? Because there was a Dark Jak? Is that why? These segments are a good enough reason to stay the fuck away from this game. Jak's appearance is downright the worst in the series. His design is incredibly basic, his yellow hair is too bright and really short. He doesn't have his goatee, he doesn't have his armor from Jak III, his ring on his chest only has 2 straps instead of 3, his wrist armor looks stupid, and isn't even there in most cutscenes. And Kira is just, no. Say no to that. Daxter is pretty much the same, except his eyes, they just look weird. And these 3 characters are the only returning characters in the game, and none of them even act like themselves, and I'd even go as far to say that that isn't Jak and that isn't Kira. So this game was the last game for the Jak and Daxter series, and was a terrible way to steer this series off. This game has been considered the worst in the series by most fans, and most fans don't even acknowledge its existence, and I for one do not blame them. Now, some people don't mind this game, some people like it, and some people don't see it as a bad game, but as a bad Jak game. And I kind of agree. Sure, the traditional Jak and Daxter run and gun platforming gameplay isn't as good as the other games, but if this was most of the game, I wouldn't hate this game as much. It's not up to par, but it's still okay. But what makes me and a lot of other fans hate this game so much is the flying and the Dark Daxter gameplay. If they were absent from the game and the story was better instead of a complete mess, I wouldn't hate this game. I would consider it a decent portable Jak and Daxter spin-off. But unfortunately, that's not the case. This game sold 0.46 million units on the PS2 worldwide, and 0.61 million units on the PSP worldwide, which adds up to 1.07 million total units sold worldwide, which didn't do too bad for a shitty spin-off. So to recap, the Jak and Daxter series started in late 2001 with Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy. It was the first completely open world platform game and was probably the best collectathon ever conceived. It sold 3.64 million units worldwide. Jak II was released in 2003 and took a completely different turn for the series, going from a simple yet engaging platforming collectathon to a badass sandbox action-adventure game. It sold 3.78 million units worldwide. Jak III was released in 2004 and was the last mainline entry of the series to date. It stuck with the formula established in Jak II but added more features like the desert and the vehicle driving, as well as building on and improving the things established in Jak II, like the guns and the jetboard mechanics. The game sold 1.85 million units worldwide. Jak X was the first spin-off in the series, and a great one at that. Jak X took the vehicle-based driving gameplay from Jak III and improved it and made it a whole lot more epic by adding heaps of weapons and combat, heaps of gameplay variety, and some of the best multiplayer any racing game had to offer. The game sold 0.55 million units worldwide. Daxter was the first game in the series to not be made by Naughty Dog, but instead was handled by Ready at Dawn Studios in collaboration with Naughty Dog. You played as Daxter, but differently from the segments in Jak II and III. Daxter takes the role of an exterminator, going around Haven City, killing metal bugs, and ultimately trying to save Jak. The game was a simple yet challenging platformer and was one of the PSP's best games. The game sold a total of 4.21 million units worldwide. Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier was the last game in the series and was a shitty spin-off by a different developer. A lot of fans disown this game and even go as far to consider it non-canon, and I for one do not blame them. The gameplay as a whole was really bad, the story is a complete mess, and it really isn't a true Jak and Daxter game. The game sold a total of 1.07 million units worldwide on both the PSP and PS2. The Jak and Daxter series has come a long way since its initial release in 2001. The series as of now spans 3 mainline entries, 2 spin-off games, and 1 game that really shouldn't exist. However, there have been no games in the series since 2009 with Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier, and Naughty Dog have not been interested in doing a new game for the past 6 or 7 years or so. We did, however, get treated to the HD Trilogy remaster in 2012 for the PS3, which was great and sold 0.89 million units worldwide, but fans have been wanting a new game in the series for a very long time. Jak X was the last game in the series made by Naughty Dog, and that was in 2005. That was 11 fucking years ago. But despite all of the series' success and its impact on the industry, the Jak and Daxter games have pretty much been neglected. When people think of Naughty Dog's games, they think of what they started with, which was Crash Bandicoot, and the things they're doing nowadays, with Uncharted and The Last of Us. Jak and Daxter are kind of in the middle, and nobody remembers them. I personally think that if Naughty Dog were to announce a Jak IV in this day and age, it would take the world by storm. Jak and Daxter is a series that a lot of people played and enjoyed, but don't remember. Jak IV would remind people of the series, and they would probably replay the games to experience the new Jak game. As of today, the series has sold a total of 15.92 million units worldwide, encompassing all the games and platforms they were released on. And for any of the newcomers watching this video, I hope you learned enough about the series to give it a go. So I'm going to leave the video here, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. If you liked the video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe if this is the first video of mine you've seen. And I would just like to say that this video took fucking forever to make, so any support for this video would be greatly appreciated. I do plan to do other game series in this series of videos, but I think the next one is pretty far away, so please be patient for these videos and maybe watch the other videos I make in the meantime. If you're a Jak and Daxter fan, you'll most likely enjoy the other videos I make, so I'll leave it here. I am the Power Cell Freak, and I'll see everyone in the next video. Okay, so you put the game in, watch the opening cutscene.